This next session will focus on supporting Venezuelan refugees in Colombia through impact sourcing. Ever since I had the great opportunity to meet Yaron Schwartz and learn about the Tent Partnership for Refugees and how they are working with Colombian BPO companies to place those refugees, I've been very excited to bring this story to our impact sourcing community. IOP is privileged to partner with Tent to help promote the good work being done to address this crisis. Yaron, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And we are equally excited to be working with IAOP in the impact sourcing realm. My name is Yaron Schwartz. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a senior manager of private sector partnerships at the Tent Partnership for Refugees. And today we are really excited to be speaking with all of you about the opportunity for the BPO sector to support Venezuelan refugees and their host communities in Colombia. Just to give you a sense of what to expect from this 30-minute session, Camilo, from my colleague from ProColombia, will talk a little bit with you about Colombia's BPO sector and why it is a great place to think about BPO services. And then I will present about the specific opportunity for the BPO community to support Venezuelan refugees in Colombia. We would love for this session to be as interactive as possible. So we would love for folks to introduce themselves in the chat, tell us who they are, what organizations they work for, and please feel free to ask us any questions throughout. We'll both be delivering presentations, and then we're happy to have some time for Q&A at the end. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I will pass it over to my colleague Camilo to talk to you about Colombia's BPO sector.
Great. If you could please confirm if you see my screen.
Yes.
Do you see it on full mode?
Not yet.
Let me see.
Yeah, now we do.
Thank you, Yaron. And thank you very much for the invitation and for this opportunity to speak all of you on behalf of ProColombia. I'm Camilo Zuna. I'm a director for business exports here in the US in our office in Miami. So, great to have this opportunity and happy to answer all the questions throughout this conversation. I'd like to spend this time with everyone that is here to tell you about the BPO business environment in Colombia, which is quite exciting and is very, trending and increasing in recent years, especially in 2020. So ProColombia, before we move into details, I'd like to tell you what we do. ProColombia, it's the promotion agency of the government of Colombia, promoting exports, tourism, and investment within Colombia, all that done under the strategy of country brand, okay? And so we do our work thanks to our presence in 26 countries where we cover 32 nations and with the work of close to 500 people that work at ProColombia today. Now that we're jumping into details and talking about the BPO industry and give you more details as to what it is to work like with Colombia in this sector, I'd like to give you a picture of what we see BPO industry in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is close to $10.4 billion in terms of market value, thanks to the work and the high demand from the telecommunication and financial services and banking, all that done through customer service and sales, which many of you are probably involved in this industry. That that it comes to no surprise to many of you that telecommunications and financial services are the two top verticals that consume the most outsourcing needs in the region. And so this is to show you, where we are focusing and what we do in Latin America and in the Caribbean. So now that we see these figures and then we start talking about Colombia and hopefully, throughout this conversation, you will have a better understanding, what we are for the BPO outsourcing business in the world. I want to give you many reasons, but I did my best to summarize the major reasons as to why Colombia is the right partner for outsourcing projects. So when we look at Colombia, we see a very diverse human talent participating in the BPO industry. There are close to 400,000 people working in this industry in Colombia. And in the call center, contact center business, there's a close to 130,000 people that do this work day to day. And this is a very interesting number, considering that we're just behind Mexico and Brazil in terms of number of agents being hired in this industry. I think it's quite amazing what we've accomplished in the past 10 years. And it's very interesting when we see that, when we say diversity and talent, is because we're not just coming from one or two cities in Colombia. We are actually seeing people from all over the place in Colombia contributing to the development of this industry. There are 12 cities in Colombia that have more than 500,000 inhabitants that are contributing and participating in this industry of BPO. And on top of that, a lot of these people are graduating from top universities and colleges in the country. As a matter of fact, 12 of these universities in Colombia are part of the top 100 universities in the Latin American region. So very diverse, very interesting, very good, of overview, not overview, but projection for the people that are actually working in this industry in Colombia. When we say diverse, we're also looking at another very important reason for working and or analyzing this industry in Colombia, and it's the agent attrition rates. They're very competitive. People in Colombia that work in this industry are very loyal to their jobs and to their employers. And this is not me saying it as pro Colombia, but it's actually, you can have a conversation with a BPO firm in Colombia and they will also reassure this message. In many instances, people stay in their jobs more than 1 year. That if you consider the metrics, in countries like the US, this probably is a good number when it comes to measuring how good your attrition rate is. Another reason that I see as very important for this industry is that our agents are very well-rounded individuals that are constantly pursuing a degree or something that makes their lives better. I know this sounds very subjective, but when it comes to services, this is very important because these agents are not just standing still with a job. They're always looking forward to improving their quality of life. And they're always involved in activities that actually demand they become, better professionals, better individuals. And so it's very common for you to speak to a Colombian that is involved in this industry, and they're not just working, they're usually involved in some academic work because they want to improve their lives. Another important reason, for working with outsourcing projects in Colombia, and this is mostly target for the North American market, is that the cultural alignment that we have with the North American market, the proximity that we have with the US and Canada, if that is the case, it's actually very easily noticeable. We have signed free trade agreements with both Canada and the US that have actually facilitated the communication and the business trading between the two nations and us. Okay, that actually means that more companies, more people have had a chance to understand what it is to work with American companies, Canadian companies, and understand consumer preferences. And then we have actually integrated that into our day-to-day work, and understand those preferences makes us better to serve the needs of American consumers. Okay, so this is actually a very strong point, because when it comes to services, if you understand your client better, you understand how they speak, what they like, it gets a lot easier, through time. And with that said, there's another reason when it comes to BPO services to work with clients in the US is that the time difference and the cities that I mentioned, the 12 cities that I mentioned earlier, all these cities are within the time zones that are actually convenient to work with in the North American market. And it facilitates the communication. It actually makes it easier for us to work with clients in the US, and for outsourcing projects in particular. This is very important to serving the needs of many clients that are expecting top quality services at any time of the day in a very convenient manner. And doing this, we've really had to bring our investment in facilities up to speed. And the government of Colombia has invested a lot of money in bringing our infrastructure to top level. So there has been a major investment from our side to make sure that the BPO firms and the telecommunication services actually works perfectly. This is thanks to the investment on 11 submarine cables that in the region, we're number 2 after Brazil when it comes to this type of investment. with this investment, we provide excellent, stable connections, and then the firms have very reliable and stable data transmissions, which is actually very good and very relevant when it comes to outsourcing projects. We want to have this in place because this is very relevant and very key for doing business. And with that said, who has taken advantage who has taken advantage of this business ecosystem in BPO and outsourcing projects? We have actually seen, the growth and maturity of many companies in this industry that are operating out of Colombia. Having said that, it's just not Colombian companies, but also international companies establishing businesses in Colombia that have actually taken advantage of the good talent found in the country to serve the needs and projects of international clients. So what you see here on this image, it's just a quick overview of the logos of the companies that are actually working out of Colombia. They have contributed to the increase of exports and services, export services from Colombia to the US market mainly. And in 2019 only, we surpassed the 1 billion line in exports to the US market. That's seeing BPO as a whole. But when we look at call center, contact center business, the export size between Colombia and the US actually been around $650 million. So this is very important because that actually put us in a very good position to say that exports of BPO services out of Colombia ranked number 3 in the country after tourism and related services to tourism as one of the leading exporting services of Colombia around the world. And it's not just the US, just to make it clear. It's also Spain, parts of Europe that are actually consuming the exports of services from Colombia. And last but not least, we are definitely experiencing a favorable economic condition at the moment, which is the currency exchange. And this is important when you start making all these financial projections throughout time, which makes sense for somebody considering doing business, finding a BPO firm, or even considering about investing in Colombia. Currency exchange at the moment actually results in a good performance balance, and it really represents and fosters business sustainability for those considering doing business in this industry. So at this point, I like to just say, in ProColombia, you find a great partner when it comes to doing business in Colombia. So with us, you can find sources of key market data. We are very good at connecting you, of course, with key government officials and also private industry partners, because we want you to be strategically networked. We link you with business opportunities. We do business meetings. We do a lot of things so that you have a good, interesting process of finding opportunities in Colombia. We provide guidance when it comes to the legal aspect of doing business in Colombia. We have strategic teams in Colombia that can help you and consult you in terms of HR, legal, and tax corporate issues. And we also have a team in Colombia that is ready to help you not just establish your business in Colombia, but also start strategizing on how, the things that you need to do to export those services into the world. With that said, I hope that I gave you, good, strong reasons as to why Colombia is a, pretty suitable partner for considering your outsourcing projects. I'll be happy for questions, maybe if it's not today, in the near future. I'm based in Miami with my team in order to, serve you and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Camilo. It's really exciting to hear about ProColombia and all the work that you're doing to support Colombia's BPO sector, and to hear about why Colombia's BPO sector just on its own is a really great place for companies to think about in terms of their BPO services. So now that we've heard this great information, I just wanted to present specifically about the impact sourcing opportunity today. And we're so thrilled that IAOP has provided us with this platform at your Impact Sourcing Forum to talk specifically about how the BPO sector can address the refugee crisis in Colombia and in Latin America. So today, I just want to tell you a little bit about the organization that I work for, the 10 Partnership for Refugees, provide you with a high-level overview of the refugee crisis in Colombia and Latin America, talk then specifically about impact sourcing in Colombia in support of Venezuelan refugees and Colombians, highlight the business case for how companies can, for why companies should be supporting Venezuelan refugees in Colombia, and then talk about some next steps. So just to kick things off, and again, we really encourage folks to put questions in the chat for either of our presentations. So just to tell you a little bit about Tent and who we are as an organization, Tent was started by the founder and CEO of Chobani, which for folks, if you're not familiar with, is a multi-billion-dollar yogurt company here in the United States. And part of Chobani's success in becoming one of the fastest growing companies in American history has been that Chobani has hired a significant number of refugees as Chobani employees. And so now approximately 20 to 30% of Chobani's workforce are refugees because they are some of the most hardworking and loyal talent that the company has. And so our founder, Hamdi Ulukaya, having seen his own ability as a business leader to make a meaningful difference on this issue, started Tent in 2016 with this mission of mobilizing the business community to support refugees worldwide. And just a few years later, we now manage a partnership of more than 130 large companies who are supporting refugees in Colombia, in the United States, and all over the world. We do have a number of BPO firms who are members of the Tent partnership, like Teleperformance and Genpact. And we are also obviously work, as you can see on this screen, with a lot of buyers of BPO services. And you can see a full list of companies who are members of Tent at our website, www.tent.org. In terms of what Tent does as an organization, we provide pro bono support to companies to help them with refugee engagement, and we do so in a number of different ways. First, we provide individualized guidance to companies to help them develop a strategy for how they are best positioned to support refugees. We take in consideration a company's diversity and inclusion goals, their social impact goals, and their business footprint, and help companies figure out how they can leverage their core business operations to support refugees. Second, we help share best practices with companies on corporate engagement with refugees, which we do in a number of different ways, including events in South America, North America, and in Europe, a global monthly webinar series, as well as guidebooks for companies on how they can best take action on certain issues, such as our hiring guides that we have for companies on how to hire refugees in about 10 countries around the world. Third, we commission research to help make the business case for why businesses should be supporting refugees, and I'll be covering a number of those research items later in my presentation. Fourth, we connect companies to local partners who can help them implement projects in support of refugees. So while Tent doesn't work with refugees directly, we work really closely with local NGOs, government agencies, and international organizations in Colombia, the United States, and throughout the world who can provide companies with support from an implementation perspective. And then lastly, we offer companies communications assistance. So we have a full-time communications team who's able to help companies think through how they want to publicly communicate around their work with refugees. We don't charge anything for companies to join the Tent partnership or to receive access to our services. Everything that we do is free, and we are really just focused on motivating the business community to do more work on this issue and to make it as easy as possible for them to do so. In terms of what we ask of our member companies, we ask that they actively participate in the Tent partnership by attending at least one Tent hosted event per year. And we're obviously doing lots of virtual programming just like this because of the COVID-19 crisis. Second, we ask that companies share their experiences and lessons from working with refugees so that we can share those best practices with the broader business community. And then lastly, we ask that companies connect us to other companies that might be interested in supporting refugees as we seek to build out a movement of companies who are taking a stand on this issue. So now just to tell you a little bit about the refugee crisis in Latin America and why it's so important for the business community to get involved on this issue. When we look at this, the refugee crisis from a global perspective, we see that there are about 30 million refugees worldwide, which is the highest refugee population since World War II. And one of the most pressing refugee crises around the world is the Venezuelan refugee crisis, in which more than 5 million Venezuelans have now fled Venezuela due to repression, unrest, hyperinflation, and a lack of access to basic goods and services in the country. While 5 million Venezuelans have already fled so far, and you can see on this slide that there are about 2 million in Colombia alone, as well as hundreds of thousands in other countries in the region, an additional 5 million more Venezuelans are projected to flee the country if conditions don't improve. And even if the Venezuelan crisis ends tomorrow, hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans are going to be displaced for years to come. In terms of the general profile of Venezuelan refugees, they're predominantly young, they're moderately to well-educated, and they're ready to engage in the labor force. One of the biggest challenges that Venezuelans face in their new host countries in Latin America is from an economic integration perspective. And they face many challenges finding jobs and meaningful work in their new host countries. We commissioned GBAO strategies to survey over 600 Venezuelans in Colombia and Peru, and found that 50% of working Venezuelans in those two countries make less than minimum wage. Only a sixth of them are working in the same fields as they were in their host country, and they also have limited access to banking, all pointing to the fact that there is so much more work that the business community needs to do to help integrate Venezuelans and support their host communities in Colombia and throughout Latin America. And this and Latin America has really been a strategic priority for TENT over the past 2 years, as we've sought to provide pro bono support to companies in the region to help them with their refugee engagement in support of Venezuelans and their host communities. We see a particularly exciting opportunity for the BPO sector to support Venezuelan refugees in Colombia through impact sourcing. And as Camilo was mentioning, Colombia has a strong and growing BPO sector that is consistently ranked as the 10th most competitive in the world. The sector offers a range of services, including Spanish and English language call centers, finance, billing and pay collection, and telesales. And so the point, as we've talked specifically about refugees, that I want to emphasize here in supporting Venezuelans, is that companies don't need to make any sacrifice to their cost or quality of their BPO services to think about how they can help Venezuelan refugees in Colombia. And there are really exciting opportunities both for BPO firms as well as the buyers of BPO services to engage on this issue that I'd love to highlight for folks on this call as they think about impact sourcing opportunities moving forward. So first, if we're thinking about BPO firms themselves, BPO firms can hire Venezuelan refugees in Colombia. And as Camilo was mentioning, many of the global BPO firms have large operations in the Colombian context. And what we've seen from talking to about at least 10 BPO firms in the Colombian context is that all of them have already started hiring Venezuelan refugees. And a great example of that is Teleperformance, the French headquartered global BPO firm. And in 2019, Teleperformance committed to hiring over 1,000 Venezuelan refugees at its call centers in Colombia and providing them with training as well on call center operations, soft skills, and English proficiency. And this commitment, which Teleperformance made at a summit that TENT hosted with the Inter-American Development Bank, scaled what Teleperformance was already doing in hiring Venezuelan refugees, where they had already hired 900 Venezuelan refugees so far. And the reason that Teleperformance and other BPO firms in Colombia have started hiring Venezuelans is because they speak English well, because they have high retention rates, and they're very hardworking and loyal employees. And so they are starting to do this work for business reasons. And it's really exciting to think that by doing good, you can also do well in this case, and that there's a really meaningful impact sourcing opportunity here. On the flip side, in terms of thinking about the buyers of BPO services, multinational companies can buy services from BPO firms in Colombia to help create additional jobs for Venezuelans in Colombia. So for those multinational companies that are already buying BPO services in Colombia, they can work with their existing BPO providers to develop projects to employ refugees. In addition, multinational companies can also think about sourcing new or additional work from BPO providers in Colombia with an explicit target of hiring Venezuelans alongside Colombians. And a great example of a company that has already done this is PayPal. PayPal has actively encouraged its BPO provider in Brazil, Saitel, to hire Venezuelan refugees to serve its Spanish-speaking clients throughout the region, and has really showcased that and really showcased this project from a PR and publicity perspective, showcasing the wonderful work that they've done with Saitel to increase diversity and inclusion within their BPO workforce. With just a few minutes left, I want to highlight the business case for why businesses should be supporting refugees and how it can benefit your BPO operations. The first is that hiring refugees is a proven way to address turnover. We commissioned the Fiscal Policy Institute to survey over 30 businesses here in the United States that had hired refugees. And what they found is that 73% of those businesses reported lower turnover rates for refugees than the average employee. So if you look at the manufacturing sector on this slide, for example, refugees had a 4% turnover rate in comparison to the industry average of 11%. And so given that the BPO sector often faces challenges around turnover, hiring refugees can be a really great way of your BPO firm addressing those challenges. In addition, by helping refugees, businesses can strengthen their brand and reputation with American consumers. New York University surveyed thousands of consumers here in the United States and found that consumers, particularly millennial consumers that you can see on the left-hand portion of this graph, were very positive upon learning that a company had agreed to hire refugees, and really presents an exciting opportunity for companies to take a stand on a social issue like this by strengthening their reputation with consumers. And we have similar data available for other markets as well. And given that millennials are so supportive of companies taking a stand on a social issue like refugees, this can actually be a really great way of increasing employee engagement. Millennials make up about half of the workforce now, and 80% of millennials are more loyal to a company that helps them support social and environmental issues. And companies that support refugees score higher on employee ratings of company culture and values. Lastly, and most importantly, businesses have the opportunity to change the course of a refugee's life. Yushka is a Venezuelan refugee in Colombia. She works for Sunshine Bouquet, a flower company, which was her first job in Colombia and has really set her up well for success in the Colombian economy and allows her to give back to the country. In terms of next steps, for folks who might be interested, we would love to connect both with BPO firms and multinational companies about impact sourcing opportunities in Colombia, or if there are other countries you're interested in, very happy to consider them as well. The first step, we would love for companies to think about joining the TEMP partnership. Again, there are no fees, but it's a great way to learn more about this issue and think about how your company can get involved and take action on this topic. And then in the long term, we would love to work with you to develop new impact sourcing commitments to integrate Venezuelan refugees in Colombia or other refugee populations elsewhere too. And again, all of our services are free, and we are here to provide you with the intel and know-how on how to do so. So we really would love to start a conversation with all of you about how your businesses can integrate refugees into your impact sourcing efforts, particularly in Colombia. You can see my email here. It's yaron at tent.org, and I can put it in the chat as well. And please reach out to us. We're planning a lot of work in this space. We're excited to be partnering with IAOP on this impact sourcing work in Colombia, and are working closely with other actors like Pro Colombia as well, and are really grateful for you all taking the time today to learn more about this topic, and hope that we can have follow-up conversations about how your specific BPO firm or if you're a buyer also would love to connect with you all as a follow-up step. So we'll now see if there are any questions in the chat, but thank you again, and please do reach out at my email below.